We're going to read from the chapter called The Initiating Spiritual Master. For those who are just joining us, we'd like to say hello to our friends in the Americas and Europe and around the world. And this book was a special project that was done with the authorization of His Divine Grace Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj. We asked him, we said we want to title this book about Guru because he was spoken so much on the subject. Uh, we were thinking to call it Guru, heavier than the Himalayas, because Srila Sridhar Maharaj remarked that Guru means Garivan, means heavy, heavier than the Himalayas. He can't be moved from his position. And this does not necessarily mean that the Guru is a dogmatist uh, who resists all change. He may be resistant but flexible, like bamboo. When I was in Navadvip, we saw big storms and cyclones coming off the Bay of Bengal up through the Ganges. And sometimes at night, the storms would be so strong that the bamboo, giant bamboo, very thick, would lay down almost lateral in the wind. But bamboo, pound for pound, is stronger than steel, but it has this incredible flexibility. So Guru is like that. He may have some flexibility, but he's stronger than steel or heavier than the Himalayas. So we proposed this title, Guru, heavier than the Himalayas. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj mused a little bit, and he thought, no, it should be Sri Guru and his grace, because uh, it's really about mercy. Mercy is higher than justice. Mercy is more than justice. So the heavy conception, it's it's nice, but mercy is better. So Sri Guru and his grace, he said, make that the title. And we were chastened. So we returned to San Jose, California. This was in 1982 or 3. I can't remember precisely. And it took us about 2 years to gather the materials, uh, listen to hundreds of hours of taped lectures with Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And I would sit down personally with an IBM Selectric typewriter. And when we knew that we were going to produce these books, we had a very tiny budget. But Goswami Maharaj went out and bought a brand new IBM Selectric typewriter with a little golf ball head on it. And it had this feature where you could go back and erase something like 15 or 20 characters. So every time I made a mistake, I had to go back and uh, physically erase 10 or 15 characters. This is before computers. And I had a dictation machine where we would put the cassette into the machine, and I had a foot pedal so I could listen to Srila Sridhar Maharaj saying, the spiritual master always performs his function from the platform of an intermediate devotee. And then if I hit the foot switch, it would run it back 2 seconds, and I could hear intermediate devotee again, and then type it in. So I physically uh, transcribed the material for this book. And once we had about 500 pages of transcribed material, uh, then I would go through it very carefully and see what was usable, because sometimes Srila Sridhar Maharaj would be talking and he would say, Divyam Gyanam Yato Dadyat Kuryat Papaya Samshaya. And then you would hear beep beep and a rickshaw arrived and he would look up to see, well, who's that? And it would be Govinda Maharaj. Everything would stop. And he would wait. Govinda Maharaj would come up the stairs and talk to him confidentially. And Srila Sri Maharaj would reach into the folds of his cloth and give him a huge roll of bills, rupees and dollars, because Srila Sri Maharaj had no idea what was he going to do with this money. He would give it to Govinda Maharaj, and there would be some chatter back and forth in Bengali, and Govinda Maharaj would welcome the devotees there. And then someone would ask, Srila Sri Maharaj, is the earth flat or round? And he would be, yes. Um, Divyam Gyanam Chitodadya. And he would go right back to where he was in the shloka without missing a beat. But if you're transcribing this on a tape a year later in San Jose, California, listening to the headphones, I can hear the monkeys in the trees jumping around in that bamboo we spoke of. I can hear the click clack of people walking down the street. It's a market day in Navadweep. I can hear the little bell of the rickshaw wallas or the bicycles coming up and down. And there's construction workers constantly pounding on the wall, removing bricks or placing bricks or dumping a load of cement because they're working on a Nat Mandir. And through all this noise, I'm trying to pinpoint. So, what is Srila Guru Maharaj actually saying here about Diksha? And so then he would change subjects. It would be somebody's birthday, there was a feast day, someone new just arrived. Uh, I remember this outstanding example that always occurs to me that Srila Sri Maharaj was told someone was arriving, and he said, ah, so Āchāryas, he's arriving by Tufa mail. I was like, what? What did he say? And I would run it back again and again. I thought, okay, he said he's arriving by tooth or nail. That must be some kind of an English expression. We will get them by tooth or nail, but I thought that's a little weird. I never heard that. Like Prabhupada would say, by hook or by crook. So by tooth or nail, I don't know. Maybe that's like a Scottish expression. Srila Sri Maharaj was educated in Calcutta by Scottish Presbyterians at President College. So I went to Goswami Maharaj, and we would go back and forth and talk about things like this. I don't know. What did he just say? Play the tape again. Let's hear it again. Mm-mm-mm. And then like a month later, Goswami Maharaj would come to me and go, hey, Mahayogi, you know what he said? No. What did he say? He said two-font mail. It's a train. The two-font mail train. It goes to the two-font station. Oh. So I had to go back and scrub out tooth and nail. And in this way, word for word, line by line, period, semicolon, we would argue, Goswami and I, is this a semicolon here? No, I think it's a period, it's a full stop. Nah, I think this is sort of a fragmental noun phrase. No, it's a verb phrase. And we would buy books on grammar and study all that. And so it took about 2 years. Now we have computers and AI and chat GPT, and you can just crank it out. But in those days, when Srila Sri Maharaj would quote a verse, I had a full set of Srila Prabhupada's Chaitanya Charitamrita. I would go through the index and look up the verse. And I'd say, wait a minute, it's not in here. So I had a Bengali uh, dictionary and a version of the Hari Bhakti Vilas, and I would go through there. Aha, here it is. And like that, it took us about 2 years to finally bring this out. And when the book was, uh, and then I had this crazy machine, which was called a lino term. When I went to high school, I took print shop, and they physically would spit out a line of metal type. There was a big, huge machine that melted lead type or aluminum type. It would melt it and then spit out a line as you typed. It was hot sitting behind it. But in the 1980s, they came out with a sort of primitive computer called the linoterm. And instead of having uh, 12 characters of grace that I could go back and erase, um, I did the whole thing on this screen that had four lines of green characters on a little black screen, kind of a tiny black screen like that. And uh, I typeset the entire book, page by page. And then you had to, it was a photo typesetter where you would print it out on special paper. And we had a dark room that I had to go into with the canister and reveal develop the paper in these terrible chemicals, really toxic, weird, bad smelling chemicals. And so that took us about, like I said, about 2 years to produce this book. The nice thing is it's still in print. We thought, well, we could probably make enough business selling these books to keep the temple afloat. But what happened was that our generous and friendly God brothers around the world would buy two copies, remove the backing, um, then photocopy the book, and then print the photocopies and bind it and create their own Sri Guru and His Grace. But Srila Sridhar Maharshi didn't mind. He didn't say, "Oh, that's terrible. Look what you did. The San Jose Temple is going bankrupt. They can't afford to do anything anymore. They have to sell the temple." No, he was happy. Oh, they're printing more books. Look, they did 10,000 in, Bangalore and 5,000 in Singapore and 3,000 in London. And now there's Sri Guru and His Grace. This book is being published in Moscow. And I visited Moscow with Srila Avadut Maharaj, and his devotees kindly gave me some copies. And I told them, well, this is a miracle for me because we did this project 40 years ago, 1984, around there, 1985. I can't remember the exact year, but that was 40 years ago. Now I'm an old man. But young people in Moscow, they're still reading this book. In China, in Ireland, they're still reading this book, which proves that the message of our book, it's a timeless message. It's not some simple, easy dogma that was produced to promote uh, some small provincial temple in India somewhere. But it contains universal truths about the nature of guru and teachers. And that really warmed my heart. And I told the devotees in Moscow, uh, I feel I could never really understand. There's this saying, the child is the father of the man. I can't remember where that comes from. The child is the father of the man. And when I first heard that, I thought that's stupid. That doesn't make any sense. How can the child be the father of the man? This is backwards. I guess it's poetry or something. But when I was in Moscow, I told them, you know, I gave 2 years of my life, blood, sweat, and tears, and toil, and arguing with Goswami Maharaj daily for 5 or 6 hours. And he's no easy person to argue with. You don't want to debate with him. He'll beat you. He'll win. But I was very persistent and continued working with him despite whatever difficulties. I love the man. He's a great soul. But Uh, I said I did that because I needed to read this book. Stendhal says we write books that we need to read ourselves. We write a book to edify ourselves because we're curious about something. We want to know more about it, and we write a book about it. So I felt like, all right, Sridhar Maharaj is alive right now, and he's telling me, do this, do that, work with Goswami. Here's your instructions. But one day he won't be. And I want to be able to look back and read this book and try to understand what was that he was teaching. It was going so fast. Maybe I really couldn't get it. It was going at the speed of light. How did I slow it down and take a particle of it, take it into myself? And that was my motivation for for printing this book. My head was on fire, uh, determined to do it. And then the years passed, and the San Jose mission was dissolved, and different devotees faded away. Some of them are no longer with us. They've passed away. They've left the planet. Uh, I moved on and got involved in other projects. And here I am now in Moscow, and these kids are reading the book to me. And I'm like, oh my God, they're the children, and they're educating me. Once again, I'm hearing the message of my Guru Dev through their lips of these children, you know? They're like 18, 19. I met some kid in Ukraine, and he was wearing this parka with artificial fur or something went around, but it looked like a golden halo. And he was skinny. He weighed like 50 kilos. But he had this glowing face and this giant smile telling me about the book and Krishna consciousness. And I thought, wow, so the child is the father of the man. See, here's my guru. Srila Sri Ramakrishna talks about how you have to find out how to see your guru. He's not just sitting in Navadvip being fanned by a young Bengali man under the bamboo. He's everywhere. Here he is. He's telling you, read that book again. Hey, check it out. And they gave me these books in Russian. I still have them. So I was in the airport. I was stuck in the airport for a few hours, I think in Germany. And there was a girl, a woman sitting over there in the same place, stuck for hours waiting for the airplane. And somehow she got to talking to me like, who are you? What are you doing? I said, well, coming back from Moscow, uh, we have these books. Oh, yeah? What are they about? Yoga. Really? And so I started telling her about the book. Pretty soon, I wound up, I wasn't going to sell her the book. I wasn't going to collect money for it, but I gave her a book and I thought, wow, this is what I used to do. I spent years of my life distributing these books. Here I am doing it again. Why? Because I met these kids in Moscow. The child is the father of the man. So that was later I tried to explain that to the kids in Moscow and they were like, what? The child is the father of, I don't understand. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's like poetry. And I thought, well, one day, you might get it. So, anyways. Om Jnana-timrandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Srila Sri Ramakrishna says, the spiritual master always performs his function from the platform of an intermediate devotee. Now, that's powerful. You have to hear what he says there. He uses the word always. And Srila Sri Ramakrishna, he's very kind and generous and, like I said, flexible like bamboo in the sense that he doesn't mind bending a little bit this way and then bending back a little bit this way through the Hegelian dialectic of thesis antithesis, synthesis. Uh, and you'll see that in this chapter. But here he uses the word always. The spiritual master always performs his function from the platform of an intermediate devotee. This is a very profound concept that's worth studying and introspection. Whether he comes down from the position of a first-class devotee to do the work of guru, or does so as a bona fide intermediate devotee, because the work of guru is enacted from the intermediate stage. It is the duty of the Madhyama Adhikari to initiate disciples. So this follows the previous chapter where he says, I command you, become guru. And this is a very hard nut to crack in the sense that we don't want to hear this. We want to say, well, you know, so-and-so Maharaj is now initiated. Did you hear? Oh, what a scandal. So-and-so Maharaj, he's initiating disciples now. Ooh, who told him he could be a guru? We hear this from our friends. And but while Srila Sridhar Maharaj is giving many caveats, and he's telling her it's not an easy thing to be an Acharya. At the same time, he's just encouraging people to take up the cross, so to speak, or rise to the platform of teacher, and to sit on the Vyasasan and give out the divine teachings, although you may not appear to be on the platform of Uttama Adhikar. So it's kind of a controversial point. A lot of people didn't like that he said that, you know. But you must consider the source. Who is this coming from? This is coming from someone who spoke for Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur when Saraswati Thakur was alive. Saraswati Thakur liked to keep Srila Sridhar Maharaj by his side because sometimes in the pressure of a meeting, after so many events during a day, uh, when a bit tired in his older age, uh, in a moment when he would reach for a shloka mentally, and he couldn't find it there at that moment. There's Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and he can give not only can he give the shloka, he can give Siddhanta Saraswati's personal understanding of that shloka and in front of a group. So Saraswati Thakur liked to have him in his company, and he lived with Saraswati Thakur in his older days. And not that this is not to take anything away from any other Acharya, but if one considers that Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada also liked to have Srila Sridhar Maharaj close when they maintained a preaching center at Sitakanta Banerjee Lane in Calcutta in the 1940s or 50s. Any doubt, any question about whether this is a semicolon or a comma or a period here in the Sanskrit in the Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada Bhaktivedanta, he could consult with Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and he identified him as his Shiksha Guru. And if you think Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada is a very humble man, and he says, well, you know, I didn't really get that much personal association with Srila Saraswati Thakur, but he gave me this order to publish books and travel and try to preach in the West. So are we to think that the erudition shown by Bhaktivedanta Swami is entirely his own erudition? Or are we to think that, yes, he did spend time listening to Srila Sridhar Maharaj, hearing from him, maybe debating back and forth, thinking about, well, what is the message of Saraswati Thakur? And growing in his realization and gaining from that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Uh, Later, he emerges as a full-fledged, self-effulgent Āchārya. But there's Srila Sridhar Maharaj in the background. And if you examine closely the message of both of them, you'll see, oh, here's Srila Sridhar Maharaj. Isn't that interesting? So when Srila Sridhar Maharaj says always, he's not saying this lightly. And the disciples and followers of uh, Bhaktivedanta Swami, who are my god brothers, and God bless them, and I wish them all very well. Uh, they might look at that and go, I don't know. I'm not so sure. I'm sure it's Sridhar Maharaj. Who is he really? But take some time, put some introspection on it, do some study, look at the Shastra, take about 10 or 20 years to run a mission, and see if he's right. You know, the spiritual master always performs his function from the platform of an intermediate devotee. Why? Because if you are, uh, take for example, Gorkishore Das Babaji Maharaj. He's not so much a preacher. He's really a Bhajananandi. He's not so much of a Ghoshjananandi in this sense. He doesn't form a mission. He doesn't publish any books. And he doesn't hold big meetings canvassing people for members. Krishna Das Babaji Maharaj, Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, so many Babajis. Gopal Bhatta Goswami. What is Gopal Bhatta Goswami famous for? He's famous for passing his realizations, reflections, ideas, and notebooks to Jiva Goswami. But he's not famous for forming his own mission or platform or movement. So these are examples of Uttama Adhikaris, but they don't really take on so many disciples. Madhyama Adhikari position means you're involved in society. Someone who is so spiritually advanced, so absorbed in the absolute that they're beyond the mundane plane. They don't get involved in things like teaching. Teaching is a very difficult business. Uh, it involves a lot of preparation, a lot of reflection, but also a lot of interaction with people who will question what you're saying. So his point is, if you are to uh, come out as a teacher and become involved in so much social interaction, you have to do that from the platform of someone who's involved in social interaction. This is the Madhyama Adhikari. He says, because the work of guru is enacted from the intermediate stage, it is the duty of the Madhyama Adhikari to initiate disciples. So this should be self-evident. It's a very simple idea. Uh, to be a teacher, you have to be involved in a school. You have to have students. If you're not interested in being a teacher, that's fine. It doesn't take anything away from you. A spiritual master may be one of three kinds. The first-class guru extends 1 foot from the spiritual world into the material world and takes souls from here to there. The guru in the intermediate stage is situated here. Just so beautiful and so well put and realized. It's hard to build on it. I saw a quote from Ken Kesey, who was a leader in the psychedelic movement. He was an author. wrote a book called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. They later made it into a movie. And he had this bus that he painted psychedelic colors and traveled around the United States distributing LSD and trying to get people to experience uh, psychedelic experience. And they asked him something about his concept of preaching. And he said, look, you can either um, talk and talk and talk and tell people, hey, there's a good place over there and you should go there. Or you can establish yourself in that place and then take a stand and show people, here's what it is. Come on. So, of course, we're not interested in a psychedelic experience, but a transcendental experience. But this is what more or less Srila Sridhar Maharaj is trying to point out. Uh, a real teacher must have deep experience of the thing that he's teaching. And he can then extend a hand to someone who is outside that experience and draw them in. This is the business of the Madhyama Adhikari. I like the world of music for metaphors and examples. So oftentimes it's said, one who can does, and one who cannot teaches. So, for example, Sivasani, your son, plays, I think he said violin in the orchestra, right? So maybe he has a violin teacher. And you'll see sometimes violin teachers, they're really great teachers. They can show you how to go from beginning, learning the notes, the staff, do, re, mi, to Bach, to Beethoven, to Mozart, to Rachmaninoff, and beyond. But many of these teachers, uh, they they might have had a career as a concert violinist or a concert pianist, but it's a very competitive world. And some of them, while they may have been brilliant with their instrument, perhaps they didn't want to travel or they didn't want to turn into a product that's marketed on the internet. And you have to move around in the world of music and compete in the politics of it all. They're they're satisfied with the music that they have within themselves and are expert in imparting that to others. So while they might be really much more qualified than meets the eye, they might participate in that higher plane. They're expert in drawing people into the higher plane. Something like that is being expressed here by Srila Sridhar. That's the nature of a true teacher. On the other hand, there are brilliant musicians who never perform. There was a great guitarist. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of him. His name was Tal Farlow, Talfarlow. Brilliant jazz musician, just brilliant. Very tall man, 2 meters, and Tal Farlow. He only made like one record album. But in the end, he wasn't really so much interested in all the money making and politics and the music business. And he really just set up his own music room in his house and relaxed and lived off, you know, the royalties from his experience. Brian Wilson just passed away. He was like 82 years old. Everybody loves, Good Vibrations, the Beach Boys. Uh, But he really retired like 40 years ago. He just sits in his house with his piano. So to be a teacher, you have to be willing to give up some of that higher plane and work in this plane. There's the example of Avalokiteshvara, the compassionate Buddha. There's some Buddhas who just sit in meditation. They don't move. They don't speak. They're there. They're enlightened. They're perfect. But there's the compassionate Buddha who comes to this plane to help us. And in a, well, you know, that might be higher. That might be a greater thing. We value Gauranga Mahaprabhu and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sometimes more than Krishna himself, because Gauranga is Krishna who's giving himself. But the ultimate high qualification of an Uttama Adhikari may be masked by his activity as a teacher. You look at the teacher and you go, well, you know, he's a teacher. What could he know? A spiritual master may be one of three kinds. The first-class guru extends 1 foot from the spiritual world into the material world and takes souls from here to there. But he clearly sees, oh, sorry. The guru in the intermediate stage is situated here, but he has extended 1 foot there, and he's taking souls to the spiritual world. The lowest class of guru has both feet here, but it clearly sees the highest plane and is trying to take the souls from here to that plane. In this way, we may roughly conceive of three kinds of guru. So again, if you think about teachers, there's the football coach who once played in the Mundial, but maybe he hurt his foot or his knee, and now he's coaching high school football somewhere. But he knows the world of football in and out. He's a great coach. But there may be another coach who's just really one of the boys. He's never played professionally. He never went to the Mundial. But he was a talented boy at the school, and the school said, look, you're pretty good. Uh, can you teach? And so he's also a teacher. So, but there's a distinction between the coach who once played in the Mundial and the boy who was kind of elevated to that post because no one else was going to take that on. These are not 3 stages of Vaishnava, but 3 stages of Guru. A first-class devotee takes the position of an intermediate devotee when he descends to play the role of an Āchārya, one who teaches by example. He has one leg there in the spiritual world, and by the orders of Krishna, he extends another leg here in the material world to do the duty of an Āchārya. The guru who has one leg here in the material world and extends another leg into the spiritual world is a Madhyama Adhikari, or intermediate devotee. He also discharges the duty of an Āchārya. The lowest class of Āchārya has both legs here in the material world, but his vision is towards the spiritual world. He may also do the duty of an Āchārya. These are the gradations of Āchāryas, and the different stages of Vaishnavas are another thing. They're mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Āchāryam eva haraye pujam yashraraye ate natad bhakteshu chanyeshu shavakta prakrite shmita. A devotee who faithfully worships the deity but does not properly respect the Vaishnavas or the people in general is called a materialistic devotee. It's considered to be in the lowest position of devotional service. This is the lowest class of Vaishnava. No, it's a terrible thing to call somebody low class. Uh, as a language teacher, um, we have the green book, the red book, the blue book, the yellow book, and the purple book. You know, we don't call the green book the 0 level. If you join a school to learn a language, they never tell you, all right, we're going to study 0 level French. Okay, you guys are lower class students studying 0 level. It doesn't sound nice. We say beginner. See? In Spanish, it's nice. It's principiante. You have the word prince in there. It's pretty. But it's an interesting point. He says, uh, they don't properly respect the Vaishnavas. So devotees like this, they love the holy places. They love to take photos of the holy places. They love to uh, bathe in the holy water of the Ganges. They love to see the deities and eat the prasadam at the different temples. But sometimes they look at the devotees and they think, who are these people? What is this motley crew of weirdos and hippies and strange, clownish, eccentric fools? I don't know, but I love the deity over there, and I love the way they use the tilak, and so maybe a little superficial, but it's okay, you know. They're still devotees. Ishware tadadineshu balisheshu dvisatsucha prema maitri kripopeksha yakaroti samadhyama. The devotee in the intermediate stage of devotional service is called a Madhyama Adhikar. He loves the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is a sincere friend to all the devotees of the Lord, shows mercy to the innocent and disregards the envious. Wow, that's nice. Shows mercy to the innocent and disregards the envious. This is very, very difficult thing to do. When people are envious, watch your reaction. Your advancement, are you a Madhyama Adhikari, Kanishta Adhikari? Your advancement will be seen in how you react to the envy and the insults and the put downs. That's why it says Trinadeshu. What? Trinada Pisu Nishe, Tarora Pisa humility. What is it? It's very easy to be humble if you're in a temple and your humility means you're going to bow down before the deity. It's very difficult to be humble if you're trying to be a Krishna conscious person and you're confronted with envy and hate and insults, even by your friends. So how do you maintain your Krishna consciousness? How do you show mercy to the innocent? Instead of saying, the word innocent is also uh, clever because it also means fool. In the tarot deck, uh, the fool is the innocent one. So the highest stage of Vaishnavism, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, is described as follows. Sarvabhuteshu ya pashyat bhagavad bhavamatmana bhutani bhagavati atmani esha bhagavatotamam. First-class devotee sees Krishna in everything and everything within Krishna. This is why Srila Srinamar says every wave is favorable. That's a tough nut to crack. What do you mean every wave? How is that? You see Krishna in everything? You see everything within Krishna. These are three stages of devotee. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains these three stages in terms of those devotees who chant the holy name of Krishna. And I particularly love what he says here. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one who has even once heard or uttered the holy name of Krishna may be considered a third-class devotee. One who always chants the name with faith is an intermediate devotee. And the first-class devotee is so powerful that whoever sees him will feel the tendency to chant the holy name of Krishna. That's really cool. See? Someone who has heard the holy name. You're doing the kirtan in the street, and somebody comes up and goes, "What are you doing?" We're chanting Hare Krishna. You can do it. Go ahead. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, with me now. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. And they do it with you and they dance. That person, they're on their way. They don't know it, but they've just been injected with the virus. And sooner or later, that will go to their head. Someone who's always chanting Hare Krishna. He's a Madhyama. What about George Harrison? You know, every Krishna book that we printed, and we printed millions of Krishna books. It says, all you need is love, Hare Krishna, George Harrison, in the very beginning of that book. Is he a Madhyama Adhikari? Was he? But the cool thing is, he says here, the first class devotee is so powerful that whoever sees him will feel the tendency to chant the holy name of Krishna. So the thing is, seeing Srila Prabhupada, people didn't know, like, who is this man? What is he doing? Allen Ginsberg is walking down the street one day, famous poet in New York. And and this is when Srila Prabhupada, he had nothing. Came to New York with $10. He had a box of books that people robbed from him. He was living in the Bowery, which is it's like the darkest, dirtiest, dankest, uh, low down place where the alcoholics would live. But at that time, students and artists, they were looking for cheap places to live, and they would begin moving in and around the Bowery. And Allen Ginsberg was walking by one day, and he saw Srila Prabhupada and his dhoti walking with his cane, complete Vaishnava dignity, taking in the air, strolling around the block, chanting his japa. And Allen Ginsberg was stunned. He saw this man and thought, oh my God, now I have to chant Hare Krishna. And Allen Ginsberg did that. And of course, he was friends with Lawrence Ferlinghetti and Jack Kerouac and uh, lots of different poets and famous people who uh, lived and worked in that area. Bob Dylan was a friend of Allen Ginsberg. Later, when Prabhupada went to San Francisco in California, Allen Ginsberg is friends with the Grateful Dead, a big rock group, and they put on a Hare Krishna show at a rock concert. And bingo, suddenly people all over the United States are chanting Hare Krishna back in the 1960s. How is that possible? Just by seeing Srila Prabhupada, they were inspired to chant Hare Krishna. And just by seeing Srila Sri Maharaj, whoever saw him physically or was in his presence uh, was inspired to try to go deeper and understand further what is this Krishna consciousness. Uh, and that gets to the meaning of this verse, Divyam Jnanam Yato Dadyat Kuryat Papaya Sangashayam Tasmat Diksheti Sa Prokta Deshikai Tatvakovida. The meaning of Diksha is it removes sin, but also promotes divine knowledge. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevya upadekshanti te jnanam ganinas tattvadarshina. The tattvadarshis, those who can see the truth, they have here probably Srila Sri Ramakrishna, he says he has one foot there. But another way to put it is to say he's seeing reality. And those who can see reality, they can impart reality to you. Just as I gave the example of the football coach. He knows what real football is, or the concert violinist. He knows what real music is. He can give that to you. There's an interesting concept in education, the psychology of education. It was developed by a Russian psychologist named Lev Vygotsky. And according to Vygotsky, he developed this idea of what he called the zone of proximal development, or ZPD. And according to his theory, he said just by being in the proximity of a master, you will advance. And it's not an entirely mystic concept, it's a very practical one. You can see it like this. Um, you're a little boy or a little girl, your daddy's driving the truck, and you say, Daddy, can I drive the truck? And he says, sure, and he puts you on his lap. That is Father's Day, so big shout out to all the daddies who teach their kids to drive. He puts the little boy or girl on his lap, and he says, okay, you hold the wheel. And you're holding the wheel. And he says, okay, we're driving. Where do you want to go? Of course, he's still controlling the car. He's controlling the wheel. He's controlling the gas. He's controlling the gearbox. Uh, but just by sitting on his uh, lap and holding the wheel, you get the feeling. You can feel the car. You can see, okay, I can do this. And what Vygotsky says is that's the position of a teacher. When you're around the teacher, somehow, we don't know, it's a subtle process. You're empowered to do more than what you can do alone. So if you're with the concert violinist and he says, okay, pick up the bow, hold the instrument like this. No, no, like that. That's good. All right. Now we're going to play Happy Birthday. And you go, I don't know. I don't think I can. Just shut up. Move the bow like this. Oh, okay. Wow, 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 I'm doing it. I can't believe it. I'm doing it. And then he said, okay, go home and practice. What happens when you go home and practice is you remember how to hold the instrument, you remember how to hold the bow, but you can't really eke out the melody in the same way that you could when you were with the concert violinist. So you go back to him and you say, show me that again. And this is how students make progress, according to Vygotsky, by being in the proximity of the master. So the transfer of divine knowledge is non-different. By being in the proximity of, of the teacher, you can feel how to go where he's been. You can feel that what he's giving is real. If you're standing next to a professional football player and he says, okay, hold the ball in your hand, even if you're just holding the ball in your hand, you can feel, okay, this is the real thing. This ball was used in the World Cup. Oh my God, I can do it. And when the master goes away, somehow the energy goes down. So you have to try to increase the time you spend in the zone of proximal development, according to Vygotsky. And this is a principle used by teachers all over the world. So what Srila Sri Ramakrishna is saying is when you're with a really true, great master, you can feel the music, you can feel the electricity, you can experience the intense spirituality of Krishna consciousness just by being in this association. That is the nature of the highest kind of devotee. The second-class devotee may have some mundane touch, but he deprecates this completely and fully attends his spiritual realization. So, in the case of someone who doesn't have that higher intense experience, they have to sublimate their own materialism. They have to control their demons and temptations while they're doing their best to teach. But one improves as a teacher by teaching. He is fully engrossed in spiritual life. His attraction for Godhead is there, but he has not fully escaped from the influence of Maya or illusion. Although he is weak, still his attempt to help others is laudable. He has not completely disassociated himself from his mundane nature, but he is conquering it gradually. He is gaining battle after battle and moving towards Krishna consciousness. He has goodwill. He is a preacher. He has reached the stage just before he finally disassociates himself from this world, takes his final leave, and enters the spiritual world. Well, I think that's a good place to stop. We did about an hour with Sri Guru and his grace, and I'm sorry if I talk too fast, speak too much. I don't know if I'm really doing justice to Srila Sri Maharaj, but some of these things have really struck me and made me think. But the idea of it's a very pregnant idea, the zone of proximal development. Uh, Mothers and fathers, they know about this. They know if you're teaching your son or your daughter how to I don't know uh, make chapatis, for example. Uh, you show them how to roll the ball and roll the dough into a ball, maybe. Later, they practice with mud, and suddenly they can do it. You know, uh, it's the transfer of knowledge from one human to another human. It's a subtle and divine process, and Srila Sri Ramakrishna is encouraging us to take whatever realization that we may have, and in a most generous way and with goodwill, uh, try to help others um, come to a higher sense of divine knowledge and realization. And this is very different from sometimes the kind of preaching that we would do back in the 1960s, where we'd tell people, chant Hare Krishna or die, or sometimes the Hare Krishna, Sadhvi Didi and Hari Priya and Tungarasi and Tapanam Nandini and Rupanuga Prabhu, Shivasini. I know you all have important things to get to. So uh, we'll stop the meeting unless anybody has anything they'd like to offer. I hope that I'm
Well,
not boring you.
I have a few messages in the chat, and also Sadhvi Didi has some question here.
Oh, I'm
Said,
not looking at the chat. Let me have a look at the chat because I'm in between reading and trying to think of interesting things to say. What do we have here? Kirti Didi, also in Norway, expresses her deep appreciation. Well, thank you so much, Kirti Didi, for, giving me the impetus to try to reflect on these things further. Expresses her deep appreciation. She's watching the recorded version. Oh, so big shout out to everyone out there who's watching or listening to the recorded version. Subhashini Didi is recording this, so you can listen to this on your headphones as you bicycle around the world or as you're walking somewhere. I know Madhusudan Maharaj sometimes likes to listen to this while he's hiking in the forests around Milan. Fantastic history. Another wonderful class. Thank you, Hari Priya. Thank you so much. When you say to see Krishna in everything and every living being, I have difficulty. Yeah, you think, hi, there she is, Tapanandini. Yeah, you think it's easy? Oh, big shout out to Pranashish Prabhu. He's hiding behind this iPhone SE second generation, but I know that's you. So good on you, mate. Hang in there. Thank you so much for the class. When you say to see Krishna in everything and every living being, I have difficulty. Yeah, that's why Srila Sri says it's a battle. What was he saying here? Right? He's weak. Still, his attempt to help others is laudable. He has not completely disassociated himself from his mundane nature, but he's conquering it gradually. He's gaining battle after battle and moving towards Krishna consciousness. He has goodwill, you know? So, how do you see? Here's the thing. If you could put on some special glasses, and see Krishna in everything and everything in Krishna, how would you be able to go to the supermarket? You know? How could you walk across the street because, oh, the car is Krishna. We Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his final years, he demonstrates this sort of ecstasy where he's totally absorbed in Krishna consciousness, but he retires from the world. He can't really cope anymore. So I have, you're not the only one who has difficulty to see Krishna in everything. You may try uh, to see Atma in everything. You may try to see that the very fabric of the universe is Atma. The very fabric of the universe is spirit soul. And this can be done through meditation daily. We're to take the holy name of Krishna and to say the Brahma Gayatri mantra. And with the Brahma Gayatri mantra, we meditate on the nature of spiritual reality. So it says here, for example, one who abuses children in terrible ways. Oh, what do you mean? Even those who act demoniac? Yes, this is a great, powerful question. Why is there evil in the world? There's definitely evil, isn't there? Evil people doing evil things in evil places. Uh, I can't watch the news. I turn on the news to see, well, is it going to rain? And I find out, oh, God, the world is in flames. I saw the other day, they're bombing here, they're bombing there, there's flames here, there's flames there, people are running. And last night I had this dream where it was dark. It was night. There were flames burning everywhere. I was on a rooftop, and I don't know if the buildings were European, but it was dark, flames coming everywhere. And then I could see, wait a minute, down there in the darkness, there's a light, and there's some devotees chanting Hare Krishna. Is that Madhusudan Maharaj? And then I woke up. So how do we see the light in the darkness? This is it's a difficult problem, isn't it? Hmm? Tapanandini says, the envious create their own hell. Then Krishna kills them to liberate them. It's Kali Yuga, folks, lest we forget. Yeah, but technically the name of this philosophical problem is called theodicy. It means, why is there evil? If God is good, why is there evil in the world? You know, and so I was thinking about this the other day, and it just occurred to me that the animals don't consider the problem of good or evil. The lamb uh, doesn't think, well, why did God create the lion? That's unfair. And the lion uh, doesn't think, well, why does the lamb run away from me? That's not fair. The deer can run fast. That's not fair. Why did God put that? The question of good and evil, it's a very powerful question, but in the end, um, morality itself is a human construct. Everything in the book of Manu that tends to describe what is Dharma and what is not Dharma, it has to do with governing human beings. And as Aristotle put it, human beings are rational animals. So how are we really so different from the animals? And animals don't have good and evil. So the very question of good and evil, the abuse of children, terrible things like this. Voltaire gave the example of a great earthquake in Portugal that killed 360,000 people. How is that? Why would a good God put something so terrible like that? But as Vaishnavas, we're really more concerned with Paramahansa Dharma and what is the what is the highest good for the soul in terms of positive and progressive uh, immortality. So these dangerous fiends and terrible people out there, how can we see that as everything is Krishna and within Krishna? I leave that to you. I can't give you the answer on that. I live and work in my own world here in Mexico, where there's a great deal of political corruption and children sold into slavery and murder and narcotics and narco politicians, narco police, narco schools, narco teachers. Uh, but I have to try to live and work with my own conscience and do my best to be Krishna conscious. So that's a great question, but it's not a question that deters me from uh, faith. Faith is a different problem. Theodicy is one problem, and faith is a different one. So you can look at the world and say, boy, this is not really, if I were God, I would not have made mosquitoes. Human beings have tried for 200,000 years to eliminate mosquitoes, and yet here they are sucking my blood. What kind of a God would make a mosquito? Well, you can look at Lord Brahma and ask him, what's that all about? We know that from the Mahabharata and the Puranas, there's a story of the churning of the ocean of milk by the gods and demons. And if you travel through the airport in Bangkok, it's a great airport, Suvarnabhumi airport in Bangkok. Just as you're walking over to customs, there's this huge, giant statue of the Mandara mountain being churned by Vasuki and the gods and demons all gathered together. And if you go to Angkor Wat, that's engraved in stone thousands of years ago by the Khmer civilization. Uh, and as they churn the ocean of milk, all kinds of things come out of the milk. And among them, uh, there's scorpions and snakes and poisonous uh, creatures. A certain amount of poison came out of that. So these poisonous demons and creatures are part of God's creation, but how that came to be, uh, was that really something that Krishna himself purposed for us? You will have mosquitoes. I don't know. I don't think so. I think that as the eternal soul turns away from God and becomes more ensconced in darkness through the temptation of believing that uh, I am the God of all I survey, and here I will find true enjoyment. We err in our way and travel further and further down into darkness. And there's some pretty bad things, there's some dark things. But I think this is a consequence of turning away from God. I don't think this is part of God's purpose for us. So I don't know. It's a powerful question. How do we find redemption in the dark forces of evil? You know, it's a very difficult problem. It's something that you may face on a daily basis. I'm a teacher in my ordinary duties, although I'm on vacation now. So I'm very happy that I'm stress-free, you know. But sometimes in the classroom, uh, here's a boy who's 7 feet tall and he weighs 100 kilos, and he's 11 years old, and he's in the same class with a girl who's 9 years old, and she's 1 meter tall and she weighs 20 kilos, and the big boy says to her, "Give me your pencil." And he's not bullying her. He just doesn't have enough money to buy a pencil, and he's asking her the nicest way he can. But she's terrified. Here's this monster who's trying to kill me if I don't give him my pencil. Uh, how to harmonize them, you know? Uh, just all these daily little problems like that. But, this is one of the big questions that philosophers will wrestle, or theologians will wrestle with that. And then the serious scientific philosophers will say, well, you see, you can't really talk about God. How could there be a God? Because it's a bad place. We're in a bad place. So seeing as how there's no God, this is the only life. The best thing is drink Coca-Cola, eat McDonald's hamburgers, and have sex with the nearest bikini, and woo-woo, buy a new iPhone and watch all that on your iPhone. But, we in the Krishna conscious world, we're trying to wrestle with these things and come out on the other side with some goodwill. But I thank you, Sadhvi, for pointing that out. It's a big question for me, but I'm too old to write a book about that. So I'm reading Sri Guru and His Grace. It gives me comfort, It gives me greater comfort to think there's a God somewhere who's inspiring me for a higher purpose. That gives me greater comfort than to think this is Kali Yuga. It's all bad, Bye bye. you know? So chant Hare Krishna and be happy. All right. So we'll see you all next week. Thanks a lot. If you enjoy this completely free experience, this is ad-free. We don't ask for any inscription. We're not asking for any reservation. You don't have to pay any money. You don't have to show me your credit card or your email or anything like that. We're just of our own goodwill trying to promote the vision and teachings of Srila Sri Ramanuja. So, Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, and we'll see you.
Jai, thank you, Mahayuri Prabhu Ki Jai. Advai Krishna also sends his dandavats. He could not be here today, so he's sending his dandavats to you. And all the devotees, yes.
Thank you, Mahayogi. It was a beautiful class.
Thank you, Tapanandini. You're always an inspiration. And I hope and pray that your art, sells. I've seen some new stuff from Panashish that's amazing and transcendental revelation of the inner nature of Kali Yuga and beyond. So good luck with your work there, Panashish, and everybody in Ireland and around the world. And Tungarasa Didi, I guess you're in Norway, is that right?
Yes, yeah. She's in Norway,
wow.
yeah.
Up in that's where Santa Claus lives.
Yeah,
right?
perhaps.
I don't know.
Somewhere there.
Well, I've been as far north as Petersburg. We were on the Bay of Finland, the Gulf of Finland, the Bay of Finland. I don't know. Over there in Petersburg, Finland's kind of. I was in Norrköping and Stockholm, Sweden, but I don't think that counts because they're over there and you're over there. So, anyways.
Usually it says that he comes from Finland.
Say again?
Usually it says that he comes from Finland.
Oh, yeah, Santa Claus is from Finland. Okay. Okay. And does that mean that, I don't know. Okay. He comes from Finland. I'll tell that to the next time the boys and girls ask me, "Oh, teacher, where is Santa Claus from?" I'll say, "He's from Finland. I know. I talked to Tungarasa Dasi, and she knows. She's in fact, hang on. I have a photo of the real Santa Claus right here. That's the real Santa Claus, and that's me over there on the left, and my sister. It's like back in 1950, I don't know, maybe 1957, I would say. That's the real Santa Claus, but he's up there in Finland somewhere. And but we don't want to talk about that. We're in the month of June, right? So happy summertime to all our friends out there. I'm just checking the messages one more time. That's it. Okay. Kali Yuga, folks, lest we forget. Watch out for the Kali Yuga, but keep in mind, every wave is favorable. Okay? Bye-bye.
Dandavats, Mahayogi Prabhu. Thank you very much.